Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is one that I have been thinking about doing for a little while because I do get a lot of questions about my overall system, and this recent reflection of mine has really come on the heels of recognizing that my system has gone completely back to my OG roots of the bullet journal method. Let's backtrack to 2 years ago now of October 2022. I picked up bullet journaling as a method to help task manage, to help brain dump, to help basically turn down the volume in my brain, coming off of the heels of an ADHD diagnosis in early 2021. And if you're like, well, early 2021 to October 2022, Elena, that's a little bit of a stretch of a time for you to still be dealing with your ADHD. You guys, it's an ongoing process. It's something that you're never going to stop trying to learn how to manage in different seasons of your life. Prior to actually getting into bullet journaling, I was trying various digital tools, different apps, different things to help make sure that I could essentially keep my life together while I was also navigating being a new business owner, having some upheaval within my family and my personal life. And thanks to YouTube, I ended up picking up the book, The Bullet Journal Method by Ryder Carroll. When I started reading this book, I saw myself in Ryder Carroll's journey. Everything that he was writing in this book resonated with me on a personal level, and I finally felt like somebody understood what was going on in my brain at that time. So I started off in a B6 Slim dot grid notebook, and I just picked it up randomly at Barnes & Noble one day while I was out shopping and started bullet journaling based off the original concepts of bullet journaling, which we'll talk about here just in a little while. I then ended up moving into an Archer and Olive A5 notebook for November and part of December, but this is when I started to stumble upon, thanks to social media, the planner community, and started to learn about brands like Hobonichi, about brands like Sterling Ink. And so I started exploring using a dated planner, using pieces of the bullet journal method for task management, just in a dated format. Realized over the course of 2023 that a dated planner system is not for me. I like to be able to switch things up, and a lot of times I want to write a lot more than what the allotted pages within a dated book would offer me, and that ended up being really frustrating. So I found myself doing the planner hopping bit over and over and over again until I finally inevitably landed back into a bullet journal system during the second half of 2023 when I was using a half-year undated Sterling Ink common planner paired with a Planner Monkey Co. B6 freely planned. I literally glued those two notebooks together, and I used the planner portion in the front, and then the back portion was overflow notes that wouldn't necessarily fit within the confines of a 6-month book in my Sterling Ink notebook. Then moving into the latter half and Q4 of 2023, ended up really leaning on just blank bound books as the core of my system, thus bringing me right back to my roots of the bullet journal method. So we're going to take a look here at some of my books, and I'm going to show you what the original system outlines based off of the bullet journal method book from Ryder Carroll, and then what my evolution is and how this system doesn't change whether I'm in bound book or whether I'm in rings. So let's go ahead and go to the overhead. All right, everybody, here we are at the overhead, and we're going to first take a look at what the original bullet journal method was all about. So when I read this book, I went through and I tabbed all of the pieces that were super, super important to me, and I reference this book frequently, especially when I'm struggling with my planning and my productivity. Let's go ahead and take a look. The layout here in this book, and this is why I typically recommend people actually pick up the physical book, is because the book really gives the physical representation to some of these concepts that might feel a little bit abstract. So we have first the index, which is essentially a table of contents of what's in your book. Within the bullet journal method, we do number pages. I don't bother numbering pages when I'm in a rings planner. I just use my dividers for the sections, and then I will take out pages and put them in their respective sections. But when I'm in a bound book, if the page doesn't have numbers on it, I will number the entire book. And I have numbered books as large as 500 pages, like the 520 page journaling ink books, because I am an indexer when I am in a bound book. This is a huge piece of my system and how I keep things organized. Then the future log and the monthly log. So the future log is to store future tasks and events that fall outside of the current month that you're in. But the monthly log is meant for the current month. So a page where you have essentially the days and the days of the weeks plus tasks and events that are happening currently in that month. The daily log ended up being a really important part of my planning system. I thought that doing like a daily entry would feel very overwhelming, but in fact, it's actually become something that I truly rely on. And then the rapid logging is the short form notation paired with the signifiers here for the bullet journal method that allow you to rapid log within that specific day. So you'll notice that there's no weekly here. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The collections is essentially the building blocks of the Bujo system. So we have the index, the future log, the monthly log, and the daily log. And those are the core pieces of the original bullet journal method that allow you to reflect on the past, manage the present, and plan for the future. And then migration, and this is again a really important piece of my system. I mentioned I had tried using a bunch of different digital tools. Well, part of the problem with using digital tools is there was two sides of the coin. It would take me too long to open up the app, format the task, set it up, make sure I had everything set the right way, plus also trying to do it either on my phone or on my desktop or on my iPad, depending on what type of device I was at or if I was on the go. And then subsequently, it was almost too easy once you figured out how to effectively set up a task in those task and project management apps to just add things. And then all of a sudden, you're looking at this huge long list of things and it's all staring you down and you don't even know where to start. And so it creates a lot of overwhelm. So the process of migration means that you filter out on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. In the bullet journal method, really meant on a monthly basis, but I have a sort of daily, weekly, and monthly process for this of filtering out the meaningless stuff, the stuff that doesn't matter anymore, but then keeping and being able to prioritize what still maybe is on your to-do list. So this is the core of the original bullet journal method. Again, I really recommend picking up the book because this was huge. If you look up bullet journaling on YouTube, it can be a little bit overwhelming, especially if you start looking up things like on Pinterest and on Instagram. This is where I started in this system. So I'm going to show you my current notebook that I'm in right now, which is a 272 page TN Sterling ink notebook. And this does have numbered pages in it already, which is really convenient. She recently came out with the numbered pages notebooks in, I think, early 2024 or maybe late 2023. I really love them. This is the mist cover. I've been in this book since August 19th and you can already see it's gotten pretty chunky. It's gotten pretty thick, especially at the bottom where I have a lot of like washi tape at the bottom. And we're gonna go through how my core collections are represented in here. But first, we're gonna take a look at this little spread I made to help sort it out. So my Bujo system, again, here are the signifiers that I use personally. These are very similar to the original bullet journal method, where I use a dot for a task, a slash for a task started, X for a task that's complete, if it's migrated into the next day, next week, or next month, or if I've moved it back into the future log or the monthly, which for me function basically is the same thing, or my master task list. I use a line through something if it's canceled. I do use this little dash for notes, although I don't love it, but I don't know what else I would use. I don't want to write notes as a task, so I just kind of deal. Then a circle for an event, and then two little exclamation points for something that is important or priority. So my index is meant so that I can reference things later. So let's take a look at my index. And this is something that you'll find in every single bullet journal that I have, because the beauty of the bullet journal system is that in a blank notebook, you don't have to put things necessarily in chronological order, and you can put notes anywhere because you can index it and reference it later. So for example, on page 62, which was actually a daily log for me, I was taking notes on Pinterest and researching this. So when I know that when I go to do some more research and maybe migrate this stuff over to my Apple Notes for more reference and searchability, I can look first here on this page 62. In page 94 through 95, I'm brainstorming planner tube ideas. 92 and 93, I have BNI meeting notes from 829 to 927. 86 through 87 is a BNI one-to-one log and education checklist. So you'll see BNI and BNI is 86 to 87 and then 92 to 93. Those two things aren't right next to each other in the book, and that's okay because we have the index. So that's the beauty of the index. Let's go ahead and flip back to this. So the future log. The original bullet journal method has the future log that is meant for future months, and then the monthly log is meant for the current month that you're in. I do things a little bit differently where I actually set up chunks of my notebook in advance. So for example, I have set up August and September and October. I won't be in this book past October, so then I guess this November, December, January, February, March, April really is more of the future log because I won't actively be using these. But you can see I already have things in January and February here. And this is essentially set up my work inbox, which I will reference this weekly as I'm planning. My personal inbox, again, I check this weekly when I migrate from week to week. Then this is a September no spend tracker because I just left a blank note here for September. I have some notes on what are my A weeks versus B weeks, and then a few goals that I have for myself with just a little checklist for me to check in with those goals, which again, I look at this at least once a week, if not more. So it's very easy for me to reference, but nothing has to necessarily be in order. So for example, I have an event on the 21st through the 22nd, but then I have notes for September 8th, which was the Sterling Ink release for the N2 planners here. So things don't have to be in order. As long as they're here, I can deal. So now with the collections, I have some that I use again, and I do this a little bit differently. The beauty of the bullet journal method is that you can really make it your own. So I always have a master task list. You see in my monthlies that I have what I want to get done that month, but inevitably I'm going to have things that need to get done that I just need to house somewhere. I'm not going to maybe do them this month, but as I'm planning from month to month, I know that I want to be able to come back and reference a master task list. So I have, and this is on page 72 because that's just where I ended up putting it, my work master task list and my personal master task list. Now there are some things in here that have URLs as part of what I need to look into, and those are organized within my notes. I will talk about that in my hybrid planning video, which will show how this system marries with some very simple built-in digital tools on my Apple devices. But my master task list is a very, very important piece of the puzzle because this allows me to just dump something in of like, I need to do this at some point in my planning. I need to fit this in somewhere. And this keeps it out of my daily, it keeps it out of my weekly, so that way I can make sure I'm really prioritizing things. Because if it doesn't need to get done this month, it just goes on the master task list, which is more long-term tasks and planning. But then as things start to get more time sensitive, they can get shifted into my monthly and then subsequently my weekly and daily. So I use dailies and weeklies in this. I don't use the daily log, however, in a way that was originally intended. I typically leverage a day on 2 pages, and I'll show you what a filled up day on 2 pages looks like. The reason that I use a day on 2 page is because I need to be able to, here's a really messy day. I need to be able to just stay focused on this day. I work mainly Monday through Friday, occasionally work on a weekend, although I try not to work more than a couple weekends a month. I keep a daily timeline. This is not pre-planning. This is just me mapping out what is happening throughout the day as the day goes on so that I can stay in tune with what my time looks like as the day goes on. Some basic habits, notes. So for example, this was when I was doing Pinterest research, my work to-do list and my personal to-do list. And the reason why I need a day on 2 page is because when I'm working and focusing on the day, I might have open tasks on Tuesday. I know that they're not going to be able to move to Wednesday, but I'm not ready to do anything with those tasks yet. And I need to stay focused. I don't want to be stressed about what I didn't get done the day before or what I have on deck for tomorrow. So for example, if this was Wednesday and this was Thursday, If I was here, I would be worried about what's happening here. And if I'm here and this day is unfinished, I'm stressing about what's happening here. So my mostly Monday through Friday is a day on 2 page, although weekends are ending up being just Saturday and Sunday because I can use just a weekend spread. Because again, I'm not necessarily working every weekend, although this weekend I did, but I'll show you what this weekend looks like. This is Saturday and this is Sunday, and I just am kind of scribbling different task lists, grocery lists, habits, keeping tabs on how my day is rolling. And I like this for Saturday and Sunday because I have less things I need to write down on the weekends typically. And if I need more room, I'll just open to the next blank page and add an extra notes page in the mix. So what's a little bit different here when I use my dailies and my weeklies, I use a rapid log in my notes. So that is more of the rapid log where I'm just writing things down as they need to be written down, and then anything of importance gets indexed earlier in my book. And then I also build in my blank notebooks a journal to keep it separate from my plans. Occasionally you'll find me in a rings planner as my main system with a separate bound book for journaling. Sometimes I have to do that because if the journaling starts to become a distraction to my productivity, I have to separate the two. However, right now I'm in a season where having them back together really, really works for me. So in the back here, I have just my stream of conscious journal pages. You'll see all these just micro journaling as the day goes on. And the reason that I chunk out sections of each blank notebook for the master tasks, dailies, weeklies, notes, and journal is because I now have an idea of about how much room I need per day, per week, per month for the journal pages. I know enough about what my trends are that I can reasonably block out time for these things and fit in a book about this size, roughly 2.5 to 3 months, depending on how much I end up writing. So an example of a book where I filled it up in 2 months would be this, which is a standard size freely noted. And I filled this book up over the course of November and December of 2023. And it was planning, it was journaling, it was checklists, it was weeklies, it was everything I needed it to be when I needed it to be it, and it was perfect. And another example of a book that I filled up over the course of roughly 3 months is this 520-page sterling ink. And actually, it's not fully filled up. There's this little chunk of pages in here that's blank, but this got so thick so fast that it was really uncomfortable for me to use, so I moved out of it sooner. I was originally planning to fit 6 months in this book, but I just really got very unhinged with everything that I was writing, and so I just ended up needing more space sooner. Just to give you an idea of what these books typically look like, right? So just some journaling here, and then I'll show you a very functional spread, functional daily pages. So like this was a day on 1 page, a day on 1 page. It was in this book where I started doing day on 2 pages and realized that I liked that a lot better. So yay for me. So this is an example of a book. This was January through March of 2024. And then that's when I switched into rings, separated my rings out as my planning and a journal, my Hobonichi Cousin Spring Start as my actual journal, which the Spring Start has now been retired, which I did a video on that in the Planner Crisis update of 2024. To look at a rings planner to see what these pieces look like, this was my Moterm personal that I use with Franklin Covey Compact inserts. So if we open this up to the very beginning, we have the monthlies. So I have just October, November, and I have just basic things that I already know that are happening in these months on these spreads. Again, very future log-esque, and I just gave myself some blank spreads in here. Then I had also a monthly task list. So here was June, and then my master, personal, and work list. This was my health section, which we're not going to talk about because that's not necessarily a core piece of my planning. But here's my day on 2 pages. So this is to-do list, daily timeline, notes, and personal to-do lists. And this is what I use day to day. So you can see this doesn't really change. Even though this is in rings, it's very similar to what's in my bound books. Then we have the weeklies. which again, very similar to what's in my bound book. Events overview, vitamins, cleaning, work, and personal inbox for that week. This freebie had a little bit of extra space. I would do work, personal, vitamins, overview, and cleaning. I still use this same setup in my weeklies in my bound book as existed in my ring planners. And even if my ring planner layout shifts a little bit, the same information is housed in there more or less week over week. And then I had a couple of extra sections, but I also had just a basic like notes section here where this is just notes pages for me to scribble out. These would be things where in my bullet journal might end up, for example, let's flip to a daily. Okay, so here's dailies, client specific resources, communication notes for this week, my weekly recurring overview. Then we're not going into another daily, but we're going into my master task list. Then we're going back into dailies. These types of pages here would have gone in my rings in this back notes section. So again, this is essentially the same system. It's just in rings, and I can pull out those pages and stick them back here for reference later. And I don't need to index it because rather than an index, I have dividers in a rings planner that allow me to access the different sections or collections with just the flip of a page. So that's basically how that works. The system doesn't really change whether I'm in a bound book or a rings planner. There you have it, everybody. That is my system. Again, it doesn't change that much whether I'm in a bound book, whether I'm in rings, and I use a lot of the same core pieces of the original bullet journal method, just fine-tuned a little bit to suit my specific needs, which is the beauty of the bullet journal method as a whole. If you found today's video either entertaining or helpful in any way, shape, or form, I would love it if you hit that subscribe button and also gave this video a like so that other people can find it. And if you're not following me over on Instagram, please give me a follow at elena.m.plans. That is going to be linked in the description notes below. Thanks you guys so much. I'll catch you on the next one.